take on life by becoming brave? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about being the hero of your own story and taking on the challenges of life one small step at a time. You know, when I was a kid, I was always brave, but it sort of artificially brave. And we'll talk a little bit about this. I wish I would have been able to read this book, Braving the Wilderness, The Quest for True Belonging and the Courage to Stand Alone by Brene Brown. You know, like I said, if you probably took all the books that were sort of self-help books back when I was a kid, maybe there was like half a dozen Dale Carnegie books. There was the one by Will Dyer. I mean, there was just a few of them, but there weren't many of them. And boy, if I had read this book when I was a kid, I think it would have helped. I was a brave little kid, but brave when it came to physical challenges, but not brave when it came to people, and not brave to stand up all the time. I was pretty good at standing up to my dad who was drinking. And when he would try to do something that I felt wasn't right, I was good at standing up to him. There was one point where I stood up to him and he picked off the phone off the wall, back in the days with big phones, and he threw it at me. And my dog, I was a German Shepherd at the time, walked up and stood between me and him with the pointy side facing him. I stood up to him, but I didn't feel very brave until that dog was there. This book is more about that personal side of things. How can we be brave with ourselves, with where we stand in the world? And like I said, had I read this book when I was a kid, I think it would have meant a lot to me more than reading it now as an adult. But I still like the book quite a bit. And this book hits deeply. She admits that she wasn't always brave. She didn't want to upset people. She didn't want people fighting. She always wanted to keep the peace. Boy, that's me. I'm the peacemaker. I'm the one who tries to create harmony between people. If people are disagreeing, I try to find a way to stop them from having a fight. And that was me. That's how I became the funny kid. Because if you're the funny kid and you make people laugh, sometimes they stop fighting. But what Brene Brown found in herself and what she was facing is that there was vulnerability and conflict, and she would try to go and read, what do brave people do? Innovators and disruptors and people who had courage. And she hoped that some of it would have rubbed off on her. And then there was this advice that Oprah gave to her, of all people, and said that you can't live a brave life and never disappoint anyone. I don't like disappointing anybody. I really don't. That is the thing I hate the most. But if you think about that, you can't be brave and make everyone happy. Let's put it the other way, which means not everybody is going to be happy with you. And once you understand that not everyone is going to be happy with you, not only that, not everyone should be happy with you. If my dad is going after my mom and yelling at her, and I stand up to him, he's not going to be happy with me, but nor should he if I did the right thing. Right. So then she met Dr. Maya Angelou and heard this quote, and it haunted her for years. And I have to say, it kind of haunted me after I read it too. You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place and no place at all. The price is high and the reward is great. And I thought, well, what does that mean? Oh, that you belong no place? I like belonging. I really do like belonging. It is uncomfortable, I think, in YouTube to know that you're throwing something out in the world and maybe people are going to hate it. I think I'm uncomfortable with that. But that quote she said to Brene Brown, made her mad. And it confused me. What does that mean? Nowhere. I crave connection and community and relationships. And Brene Brown said she did too. I spent most of my life looking for my people, craving the big sister, that baby brother, that family that I always wanted to have that I never got. And I created a group of friends that are as close to family around me. The idea is that I've spent this life cultivating so that I could belong somewhere. And now I do. I feel like I belong to a group of people. Brene Brown said the same thing about herself. She said as a kid, she imagined, sleepovers and birthday parties that she missed out on because she didn't feel like she would fit in. And, You know what? I get that. I had friends when I was in grade school, but they weren't my people. You know what I mean? They weren't, we were friends. I don't wanna say that we weren't friends, but I knew that they just weren't my people. And after a while, I started to think, maybe I'll just go pack up. Like I said, and lived in the North Woods. Maybe I'll just go pack up a backpack, and I'm just gonna go live in the woods and be done with this. Just me and a backpack, surviving, building a lean-to, that kind of thing. And eventually, Brene Brown realized that too, that the thing about not belonging anywhere feels devastating. And to me, it's frightening. But she also says that she understood this deeper thing, that not belonging can also be a kind of freedom. Because if you belong to no one, you're free to be yourself. If you don't owe anyone any conformity at all, now you're free. Now you're being able to be in that wilderness, so to speak, which could be lonely, but it's also freeing for you to be you. And that's where I think Brene gets that clear. She starts to clear up that idea of what that quote eventually meant. She says that we got three choices when we come to pain. We can deny it and numb it. We have something painful in our life. We watch TV, or maybe some people drink alcohol, or they eat their pain away. We could pass it along to others, which means something bad happened to us. I'm going to treat you horribly too. Or we can find the courage to face it with compassion and be ourselves. And that's something that really hit me hard. And then she says something really kind of haunting too, is that sometimes the most dangerous things for kids is silence, where it allows them to construct their own story. And that story is almost casting them as alone and unworthy of love and belonging. And like I said, that was me. At some point, I thought I would be better living by myself in the woods with nobody around me. There's nobody here who's on my side. Is when I thought about it. That's my narrative. And I just have to fix everything for myself. And in some sense, it made me strong, but it also made me very much alone. I learned how to solve my own problems. It's why I read so much. It's why I do so much research into everything. It's why this podcast started 4 years ago. I learned how to fix things for myself. But it also meant that I was alone. And boy, that kind of sticks with you. I found there was something interesting. I was dating a guy, and he said something to the extent of, I feel like you don't need me. And I don't think he meant it like he wanted me to just lean on him and not be a strong woman. I was so strong and so independent that he didn't feel at all wanted in my life. And I thought, well, yeah, I built my whole life so that I don't need anybody. I don't need anything. I can survive anything all by myself. And when reading this book, I was like, oh boy, that's sticking to me right here. So eventually, Brene found her people. She got her husband, her family, and she learned that she had to let herself have fun, that she had to write permission slips, physical permission slips, no matter how goofy that felt, that she could write them down and allow herself to just enjoy herself, that she was starting now to learn how to be herself. And I think that came out to me too. Instead, in grade school, I was everything to everyone. And in high school, I was everything to everyone, and same thing in college. And something happened to me when I found my best friend, because we allow ourselves to be ourselves. Her strengths, her weaknesses, my weaknesses. And suddenly I was able to no longer be everything to everyone, and instead really just be myself. So she said the turning point came at a leadership conference when she was at the highest point of being a speaker. She started writing books. She started beginning invitations to be speakers at major conferences. It's when we started hearing her name coming up. And even though she was just up there in her jeans and clogs, her husband told her, quote, "You always belong to anywhere you show up as yourself." And that, she says, was a light bulb moment for her. This wasn't about her changing so that she would fit in. This was about being herself and letting that be enough. And I guess it's interesting because I still find myself at points trying to be everything to everyone, even though I've learned that lesson. I'm a t-shirt girl. I wear these are my work clothes. This is what I wear to be at work. And I'm really a graphics tee kind of gal. But I don't do it because I try to present a good image. So I'm doing this to look better, to portray a more confident image to you. And that's not really who I am, which is kind of interesting to me too. Same thing with this conference. I'm going to speak at a conference in 2 weeks, and I set out my clothes that I'm going to wear. And it's clothes very much like this. But do they want me to be there? I mean, this isn't a formal work conference, so I could wear jeans and a t-shirt. Why am I not doing that? Because I'm trying to impress people. Anyway, so this innate human desire to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, because we yearn to be a part of that. We try to acquire this group. We seek approval from other people. It's not that these hollow substitutes for belonging, they're actually barriers for it. Because if I show up here and I'm dressing in a way that's not me, and I don't act in a way that's not me here, but I'm wearing an image that's not me. Now you're not seeing the authentic me, who is a t-shirt gal, right? Who wears graphic t-shirts from everywhere she goes. Everywhere I go, I buy a t-shirt because that's who I am, and that's where I find me expressed. But then I'm also wanting to belong. I'm wanting to get acceptance. Even here in the YouTube world, I'm trying to gain acceptance, and I shouldn't be. I think that's the message I'm going with here. So now Brene Brown gives us 4 practical practices for braving the wilderness, to finding true belongingness by becoming ourselves. And so let's go through each of them. Is that one? People are hard to hate when you see them up close. It's all about getting close to people who are different than us. And instead of avoiding them or arguing with them, instead get curious, listen, try to figure out what makes us tick. We live in this age that when someone disagrees with us politically, we have to fight, right? We live in an age when someone believes differently than we do for religious purposes, we decide we want to fight. I bet you that there's half a dozen people who maybe heard one of these videos and found out that I'm a Christian and turned it off right then and there because they don't want to hear from a Christian. Instead, listen, lean in. I do the same thing for other faiths. There's a whole channel of places I listen to hear people from other perspectives, other faiths, not so I can become that faith, but so I can understand their walk better. I can understand them better. And that doesn't mean that I'm sitting there trying to learn how to react so I can respond to them. Instead, I'm actually just trying to listen. Number 2, speak the truth to BS. She said the real world, but be civil. You can speak truthfully to people and still be civil and still say the truthful thing. You don't want to lose your humanity to them. You don't want to scream at them and yell the truth at them, but you still need to stand firm. That's really hard for me to do. That when people disparage something I believe politically or disparage something I believe, more importantly, religiously, I have to speak the truth to them, and my inner gut is to back down. Don't say the words. And I'm good at it. Even when at work, when I have projects that have a little bit of conflict in them, I'm always very good at not saying things. It's one of the best things I am. But that's not great. That's not always the way that we're supposed to be. We're supposed to, I got hired, let me put it this way, for my experience, for my knowledge, and to drive a project. But me not speaking is not what I got hired for, right? Okay. The other thing she says is hold hands with strangers. It sounds poetic, but she means it realistically. We're in this shared humanity together. Everything we have is about connections in good times and hard times, at funerals, at celebrations, at concerts, at public tragedies, at public celebrations. And when we stop being opponents and just become people, we will build those connections. That doesn't mean you don't get to be who you are. That means you're standing in who you are and still holding hands with other people. I heard the other day that C-SPAN was starting a brand new channel called Ceasefire. There was always that famous debating show called Crossfire. I'm going to debate you politically, but instead Ceasefire. is about us actually finding peace with each other, even though we have political differences. I think it's going to be about political friends who are on opposite sides of the table. And then she says, strong back, soft front, and wild hearts. I think that's probably my favorite quote. But it means we're going to have a backbone. We're going to stand our ground, but we're going to stay vulnerable, kind, open. She says, be fierce and be tender. It's not an either or, it's both. So it brings me to the story that when I was done with this podcast that I did a while ago, I was watching YouTube videos because I wasn't really sure. Usually I read a book and I'm pretty sure what the point of the book by the author was. But I did have some questions if I was having the right take on this book. And so I started looking at YouTube videos of other people who reviewed this book. And one woman talked about how she was practicing braving the wilderness. And she talked about an aunt that invited her every Easter to be with her family, but they all went to church together. So she wanted to sleep in. And she decided that she was going to be her own self by basically telling her aunt no. And I'm not here to judge her experience. I don't know. This might have been a big step for her, and I can respect that. But to me, true belonging isn't just about drawing this line and erasing them and saying, I'm not going to church with you because I'm standing in my own truth. Because you are now denying them their own truth. I think that when you're secure at who you are, you can go any place, be with anyone, hear anything, disagree with anyone, and you're not shaken by it. You don't need to argue. You don't need to agree. You're just you. It's not about Aunt Mildred telling her she has to go to church. It's not about this girl saying no thank you and slamming the door. It's instead showing up as yourself. Whether this event defines you or something that you would like, or whether this event doesn't define you, you're ready to belong wherever you are. Even when I was a kid, I used to go to church with my friends. I was an atheist. I was a hardcore atheist. I did not believe in God, but I was okay. I was comfortable enough with myself that I could go to church with them because they needed to go to church and then we would go do something afterwards. It was fine. That was who they were. It was a part of what they wanted to do, and I could respect that. I think being your own self and being brave means you can show up anywhere. And you're going to be fine, and that's going to be fine. So my challenge to you is think about a situation where you really crave approval, where you're trying to get someone to like you, notice you, accept you, something like that. And you keep shifting yourself, trying to earn this respect. But what if instead you show up as yourself, imperfect, real, honest, something small? Is there some way that you can show up as authentic to who you are? I'm not talking about, we like to throw around phrases all the time and you see it all over the internet. I'm just trying to be my authentic self. I'm talking about not trying to show up as your authentic self, but being comfortable in your own self, that you're okay with you and you are who you are, and that you're looking just to be you over any kind of external approval. I think that's where the truth is. And then once you belong there, even in yourself, that's where you can be anywhere, even in the midst of the wilderness. Christianity talks about wilderness all the time, that, Jesus was in the wilderness and he was tempted, and he did not hide from it. He didn't yell at Satan. He was just there, comfortable in his own messiahness, to know that anything that he's going to face, he's going to be able to reject, see the truth in it, and say the right thing. He was comfortable in that. And I think we can take a lesson from that too. There are times in our lives when we walk through wilderness, and becoming comfortable in that is what is going to make us stronger. Strong backs, soft fronts, right? All right, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you listening today. Please remember that all my podcasts are also on YouTube, and each one of them has a blog article to go with every episode of this. So you can find this one in startwithsmallsteps.com. You can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. And just remember, whenever you're braving an emotional or physical wilderness, it starts with small steps.